Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the pod. I'm Mike Schroeder. I'm joined by Alex Stoddard. So I played against him when he played at Williams, and he's the more notably, besides his good basketball career at Williams, he is a platinum music producer, filmmaker, and also digital content creator. So, Alex, good to see you. Thank you for coming on to the pod. Really appreciate you making time.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So before we get into anything with your music career, filmmaking, all that stuff you've done off the court, which is obviously tremendous. Let's talk a little bit about maybe your passion for basketball.
Mhm.
What led you to go the D3 route and just kind of your interest there, and maybe what you learned at Williams along the way.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, like my goal was always D1, go to the NBA, kind of like every kid. I had a bunch of injuries kind of going into high school and throughout high school, and Williams was one of the top schools recruiting me. They were showed a lot of interest in me, and I really connected with the coaching staff, and then went up and visited a few times, and kind of just loved the team, and felt a good connection with them. I think that was the biggest thing going into my decision to go to Williams. Visited a few other NESCACs, Amherst, Hamilton. Um, a few other local schools, but yeah, Williams definitely stood out just in terms of the culture and like the guys on the team really welcoming me in. And then basketball wise, like I loved Coach App and was excited to play with those guys. So
Yeah, what do you think there were some, I guess, over your career, right? When you're playing the NESCAC, I guess, or even just playing at, high level competition, which Williams does.
mhm.
What did you think you learned about yourself, maybe from like a leadership standpoint, or just like kind of, fighting through adversity? Because, regardless if it's injuries or if it's, the games you're going through in the
Mhm.
NESCAC, the grueling competition, there's adversity. So can you talk a little bit about maybe like the growth you had maybe as a leader during that time, or just stuff you saw that, helped you kind of develop into, the person you are now?
Yeah, I think coming in freshman year, like I wasn't one of those guys who was going to talk in the locker room at all. But I think like just over my time at Williams, like I just gradually got more and more confident, like with what I brought to the table, and then allowed that to like try to inspire other guys. I had an injury my junior year that I missed the whole year from. Thought I was done playing basketball after that, and then ended up being able to play my senior year. And that really just that adversity and like going through that really just gave me a new perspective on basketball and like kind of brought my love back for the game. Because my sophomore year, and then obviously the year that I missed, I was pretty much dealing with that same injury that whole time. And so that was really tough to kind of keep my just to kind of feel the same way about basketball because every time I'm playing, I'm just in pain. So this year was amazing like to be able to play and feel pretty healthy throughout the whole year. And then now I'm thankful enough to be able to play another year coming up. But yeah, I think just going through that stuff like allowed me to like, you know, force me to work extremely hard to get back. And so that gave me a new appreciation for it, which I think the guys on my team also like understood like how much I went through just to be on the court. So like that gave me like it allowed like them to respect what I was saying, that it's all coming from a place of like wanting us to be our best as a team.
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit just about again like Williams as a whole, and maybe like just what the school meant to you? You were
Mhm.
there for 4 or 5 years, I guess, whenever
Yeah.
you want to put like obviously Williams speaks for itself from being a high
Mhm.
academic school and not just a basketball. I just mean the school as a whole. Like, what did the school you think helped you at least in your career as you go play one more year, and just
Yeah.
kind of see what your careers can look like after that, right? Like, how did
Mhm.
Williams kind of help you, and like what did Williams mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, school wise, it was really hard. That was one of the biggest things. But besides that, I think that's also what kind of brings people together there is like you're all going through the same thing. Like you're all taking extremely hard classes, going through the tests and the papers and all that. Um, but just the people I met there were amazing. Like whether it's basketball or just people in my classes and stuff like that. And then even the alumni, like that's one of the big things with Williams is the alumni network. Coach App did a great job of like, connecting us with alums and making sure that we were connecting with other alums in the fields that we're interested in. And I think coming in, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at all. Still kind of, figuring that out now, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I was, taking econ classes, taking sociology classes, taking all kind of stuff, just trying to figure out what I was interested in. But I talked to a bunch of alums and heard from them, like, how they came to whatever career they're in. And I think just talking to people, really talking to people in the community, like there's so many interesting people at Williams that are doing all different things, whether it's in art, whether it's in like finance or anything like that. Even if it's something that I wasn't personally interested in, just learning from them, like I think was probably the biggest thing. And yeah, like I said, just how hard it was, I think brings people together. And like, you all have that shared experience.
So what I want to shift over to is obviously if people look at your LinkedIn or follow you on Instagram, they see, music producer, filmmaker, digital content creator, right? But obviously platinum, in front of that. Can you talk before we get into any of that success? Can you talk about like where that passion came from? Like, being able to edit music, to, edit video, to be able to create content, like all that stuff. I mean, because that's a tough path to get into. It's tough to start it, but you were able to find success in it. Can you talk about where that passion came from?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of always just been a creative person my whole life. When I was in middle school, I had a basketball magazine that I wrote where I would interview basketball coaches, basketball players, and no one ever tells a kid no. So like as a kid, anyone I asked to interview would pretty much say yes. So that was kind of my start with it. That transitioned into me making basketball mixtapes with a channel called Game Time TV. So I would go to high school games, college games, had some, future NBA players. I had Karl Anthony Towns when he was in high school, Donovan Mitchell when he was in high school. A lot of like the, New England, Massachusetts legends, and that I was able to watch in the area. So I would go to their games, film their games, and then edit those videos, and kind of just learned it all just by doing it. I think that's like with anything creative, that's the only way you can learn is just doing it. You have to just force yourself to just try stuff, and then obviously like consuming other people's content, and like that's where you can learn. Like, oh, I want to try and do something like that. I want to take inspiration from that. So yeah, that's kind of where the video stuff came from. I played the cello when I was a kid. I guess that's kind of where the music side came from. And then when I was in high school, um, I was injured and I had a lot of time on my hands. So I started messing around with GarageBand. And then that's where the music production started. And then yeah, I would just work with artists from my school kind of all throughout high school. And then when I was going into college, I kind of made the decision that I really wanted to take it really seriously. So that summer before college, I was in the studio a lot. I was trying to network a lot. And then my freshman year, I wasn't really doing too much socializing. I would just kind of be in my dorm room, go to practice, come home, and work on beats and stuff. So really was just locked in on that. And that's when I made a lot of progress. And then COVID hit, which again gave me even more time. Didn't have to worry about school for a year. And yeah, just really locked in on the music, and the networking is also huge. Just anything creative, networking is huge. So really just focused on that kind of stuff and working on my craft. And then yeah, had some fortunate enough to have some big songs and work with some big artists, some of my favorite artists. So that was what even made it even better.
Yeah, that's actually what I wanted to segue over to is, you're able to find success in that. And can you talk a little bit about just kind of the people, if you're allowed to, the people you're interacted with, and how you're able to, build that network and that success, and I guess that reputation, to be able to, obviously get a platinum,
Yeah.
in music field. I mean, that's not easy to do. So can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah. So the first like I guess big artist that I worked with was Young Blue. I remember it was actually probably right before COVID hit. So I was at school and I made that beat in my made a few beat made a bunch of beats for him in my dorm room. And was talking to his manager, and he would play the beats for him, and then he was really really liking my sound. And so we had a few songs together. And I remember I got the call that he was going to officially use one of them, like as I'm at like a TA session. Stepped out of the TA session, it was like, one of the best moments of my life, I felt like at that point. Um, and that kind of got the ball rolling, I guess, in terms of working with bigger artists. And then, like I said, over COVID was just really focused on networking and working with different producers. And that's a big way that, you're able to reach different artists is by working with different people. And so working with different producers that are able to send your beats to different people, um, was huge. And that's how the Raw Wave song came about. And I was working with a producer named Tego, and I did the melody for it, sent it to him. He did the drums, and then he sent it to Rod. And yeah, and then the song OMDB came about, was featured on his album Soulfly. So kind of, it's all about just putting the time in, and like networking is really the biggest thing.
Can you talk a little bit about like film also and just like digital content for yourself as well? Because I mean, at least from people who I've talked to, like that's a big, in order to like make successful films and to create good digital content, you gotta know your audience. You gotta know also like the different stories you want to get across. So can you talk a little bit about like maybe some of the films that you were trying to, or you had made, and then also like how you were able to create digital content around just your brand itself?
Hmm. Yeah. So when I was in seventh grade, that was kind of the first, I guess, film that I made. I made a three-part documentary series about my AAU team. We went to nationals. We went to a crazy trip to Germany for an international tournament. And so my dad would film the games, and I would film it off the court. And then I edited that into like a three-part series on YouTube. So that was kind of my first real experience with making a film, I guess. Um, didn't do as much of that in high school, but then like I said, or so this past or 2 years ago, so in my junior year when I was hurt, got the chance to kind of get back into it. And that's when we filmed a documentary about our season at Williams, which currently in the process of editing and co-directing that. And so, yeah, I mean, um, you know, I think just having that experience throughout my entire life of this the passion for like for video and all that is what led us to want to or led me to want to make this documentary on Williams and our season, and especially the fact that I was hurt kind of just kind of timed perfectly. And then in terms of digital content, so I was working for an agency, an NBA agency, interning with them a few years ago, and one of the agents ended up connecting me with New Amendment, which is Evan Turner and Andre Iguodala's production company. And so I did some podcast work for them. So I edited social media videos and also like helped kind of build out the original or build out the podcast for the Beyond the Big Ten podcast, which was basically a podcast network that featured a bunch of Big Ten schools with former and current players as hosts, kind of just covering all things Big Ten. And so that was a great experience because Evan kind of gave me like a lot of creative like freedom to really like let my ideas like really just bring my ideas to life. There weren't too many limitations. Like he really trusted my creative input, and so that really just gave me a lot of confidence in my own work. Um, and yeah, so that was a great experience also working for them. And then yeah, we're kind of right now kind of just still working on the documentary. Also have lately been kind of getting back into the mixtapes and stuff. I've been doing some stuff just on the side, like freelance stuff under my new A Media page. A friend of mine has a basketball league in the local area named Kyle Butler, another NESCAC alum. And so I've been going to his events and doing some content for him. And yeah, just kind of trying to stay busy. Just kind of keep working on my skills and stuff like that.
So can you talk about, with obviously, creating these like mixtapes and, in different films, like the idea behind it obviously is, have a creative, mindset and creative framework, but it's also to, showcase unique stories and, unique highlights about basketball players or, AAU teams or whatever. Can you
hmm
talk about just like, the importance of like storytelling for athletes? Like a lot of times, people love the stories of like basketball teams and stuff like that. Like, can you talk about for you, like what was so important about storytelling when you're doing these different endeavors?
Yeah. I mean, I think like from a young age, like I've always loved just like consuming basketball content, like Hoop Dreams. I think 1980s is one of the first like basketball films I ever watched. And then growing up, like, LeBron James is More Than a Game was a movie that I was really excited to watch when it first came out. ESPN 30 for 30s. I used to always just love watching those. And that's kind of what inspired me to, make my own documentaries and stuff. And then I think in terms of like working with Kyle's league and stuff like that, it's kind of the same thing. It's, whether it's a brand or a player or a league or anything like that, like people care. People only care like when you're telling them a story. Like if you're just posting, updates and stuff, it's cool. But like if you're really telling a story, um, I think people just can connect to it more. And so I think that's something that, I've tried to work on is being able to tell a story from front to back and stuff like that. Um, because that's how you connect with people is like, you tell them a story that they're interested in.
Last question for you is, I guess, what are, your future, like at least thinking wise, future goals and, maybe some lessons learned so far from your different
Hmm.
endeavors and successes you've been able to have?
Future goals. I think one of them kind of um, mid to long term, I guess, is to one day like have my own production company. Because I think like we're just been talking about, like I want to be able to tell the stories that I am passionate about. Um, And so having my own production company allows me to, even if it's not necessarily my idea, if someone else comes to me with an idea that I think is worth telling, like being able to, provide the platform to make that um come into fruition, I think would be really, really dope. And then also just be able to tell the stories that I want to tell. So like whether I'm directing it or producing it. Um, and then I guess like kind of more broad is to just like continue to like, I've done like the music and the film are kind of separate. And I think that starting to get the more into the film. kind of showed me that I don't have to be kind of like one dimensional. I don't have to just do music. So I think continuing to follow that and just trying to follow my passions wherever they take me is like one of the big goals of mine. Not feeling like I have to do one thing for the rest of my life or be in one industry, like kind of being free to like follow wherever my career takes me, whether it's in sports or media or anything like that.
And my last question is just like, what are some maybe like lessons learned that you think if someone is trying to go down the same path of being able to, create content themselves or to produce music or whatever, like trying to
Mhm.
create their own brand, what are some lessons or maybe some guidance you would be able to impart on someone that's trying to go on the same path?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really just like, you can watch all the YouTube videos on how to do it, and you can listen to all the podcasts on how to do it, but like it really doesn't mean anything until you just do it. Like, um, yeah, I think that's with creative stuff, that's the biggest thing is like you just have to put yourself out there and try it. And like your first year, your first 10 things that you make, 100 things, 1,000 things are going to be trash. But that's how you get good is like you just have to keep doing it over and over and realizing what you like about your own stuff and then realizing what you don't like. And that can only be done through experience. And that goes through like music. Like when I was first making beats in high school, like I look back on them now and I'm like, these are terrible. But at the time I thought they were great. And that goes the same for all the stuff I'm making now, like film wise. Like, when I look 10 years down the line from now, I'm probably gonna be like, wow, I can't believe I thought that was good. But, that's just the progression. And that's how it should be, because you should always be getting better. You should always be improving. And like, your taste is always changing too. So that's why it's important to just like start now. Don't try and have all the answers before you start. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, Alex, thank you for coming on the pod. Obviously it's good to talk about things outside of just what's on the scouting report for an Amherst Williams game. So all kidding aside, it was good to talk to you. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming on, and definitely appreciate you sharing your insight today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, everybody. That's another episode of Shred's Takes. I was with Alex Stoddard, and thank you guys again for tuning into the episode. And stay tuned for more. Thanks.